Patel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And if I may, I'd just like to begin my remarks by congratulating the Honourable Member for Westmoreland and Lonsdale for this debate. I'm going to come on to some themes that he's spoken about in a minute, but importantly, I want to congratulate the Minister for not just being here, but for the work that he's doing. And I'm going to disaggregate, if I may, some of my remarks, because clearly I've worked in the Home Office, so I know a little bit about certain aspects of policy. But there are wider issues here, if I may say so, around labour market skills and shortages, which is really what's brought me to this debate today that I do just want to air. And with regards to the Honourable Member and his beautiful constituency, I have to say it's been a few years since I've been to his constituency. I have a bit more time on my hands now, and providing I can get there, I absolutely will, because this is a very beautiful part of the country. And this debate and the issues that he has raised are incredibly pertinent to the entire country, to the United Kingdom, because we have seen labour shortages and skill shortages in certain sectors for certainly as long as I can remember being a Member of Parliament, Madam Chair, and that is what we need to address. And if I may just park sort of home affairs issues to one side right now, particularly when it comes to visas and things of that nature, there has been, and the Honourable Gentleman, the Right Honourable Gentleman has already mentioned this, some work, but I will say not enough work, across the whole of government to actually put together a wider strategy for the labour market. Now, I've been very vocal about this. I'm a former employment minister as well, and when I was the employment minister, I was one of the few advocates for labour market strategy for the entire economy. And if I may say so to this House and Chamber right now, this is something that I've also encouraged our new Chancellor to adopt and pick up and champion, because we need the Treasury and we do need the DWP in particular to be the advocates of a proper, coherent labour market strategy. This is really important because we are seeing wage inflation in certain sectors, and of course in the hospitality sector, which the Right Honourable Gentleman points to, we know that there are shortages, but also we have to be honest, there is not enough training, there is not enough investment, there is not enough career progression in certain areas, certain sectors, and hospitality is one of them. And I do remember from my time as Employment Minister, the hospitality sector were doing a great deal actually to develop career paths, make their jobs much more appealing, to invest in the individuals that got jobs, and this is really important, so that quite frankly, they might start behind the bar, but quite frankly, they could become general managers of hotels, bars, restaurants, etc., etc. And that is effectively, I know on this side of the House, we believe in the ladder of opportunity. We want to see people develop their careers and be incredibly successful, rather than seeing the hemorrhaging of staff in certain sectors. And I think that is incredibly important. So my major point right now is that there has to be, and actually I don't think this is party political at all, we should encourage the development of a labour market strategy for the whole of the country, rather than trying to find these sticking plaster fixes of visas and things of that nature, which I will come on to in a minute as well. But this does also, and if I may, I'd like to just, going back to the Right Honourable Gentleman's comments, he referenced, the immigration system, but also some of the changes that have been made, which, quite frankly, obviously I was involved in as a former Home Secretary. Ending free movement, that was a manifesto commitment. That was part of leaving Brexit. That's what the British public voted for. We were delivering that, absolutely, while also at the same time reforming aspects of the immigration system. The points-based immigration system is absolutely there to ensure that employees can sponsor individuals, admittedly not in the sectors that he was speaking about, but certainly in other key and critical sectors, including the NHS. We cannot overlook that. The NHS does rely on overseas workers, and that is important for the health and well-being of the NHS, while, of course, we need to grow more talent domestically as well. But these are important areas. And if I may just touch on another aspect, I do want to talk about youth mobility, because this is an important way forward, I think. But again, the Honourable Gentleman will know, and many colleagues will know as well, around seasonal agricultural workers, the fact that that does enable workers to come to our country for very specific, yes, restricted time frames, but in key sectors. And it was only last year that shortage, the seasonal agricultural workers list, was expanded to include haulage drivers, for example, key workers in agriculture but not horticulture, so the farming sector, for example, when we saw pressures in the economy. And it's right that we have that agility and freedom to effectively determine some of those changes, while also, if I may just say, and I'm sure the Minister will agree with me on this, demonstrating to the British public that we are able to invest in our own homegrown skills and invest particularly in parts of the country, and I've seen this previously, not in my last role in government, but in a previous role in government in employment, where we had pockets of unemployment around certain parts of the country that we invest in those parts of the country too. I said that I'd just like to talk about youth mobility schemes in particular. I have been involved in some of those discussions, and the right honourable gentleman actually made reference to some of the bigger countries and economy, India being one of them. You know, there is an agreement there where we can actively bring young people over from India. They're actually highly educated and very skilled, and you know, but we still want them to work here. And the point about youth mobility is that we can reciprocate that, and that's really important in terms of our young people gaining skills, life skills, elsewhere in the world, and that shows what a free and open country we are too. But I may just, if I may, Madam Chair, just in the interest of time, just conclude by really emphasising, I think it's actually quite unfair that a Home Affairs Minister has to respond to wide-scale labour market issues, because they are cross-government. One of the biggest takeouts that we must have is better integration across government departments to address issues around the labour market, skill shortages. You know, I mean, when we look at the apprenticeship levy, for example, what is happening there? How can we make that much more effective in different parts of the country? How can that be targeted to key sectors, for example? How can colleges have much more bespoke schemes for shortages in the labour market? So we are literally developing a pipeline of young people to come forward. And my final point is, as a Member of Parliament for an Essex constituency, the constituency of Witham, 80% of my constituents are employed by SMEs. That's 20% higher than the national average. We are, by default, a very entrepreneurial part of the country, very SME-based. But at the same time, we have to look at the needs of many of those SMEs when it comes to skills, but sustainable employment as well. And I think that's why I would really encourage all colleagues across the House, basically, to work in a united way to look at getting government to have a skills strategy and a labour market strategy for the entire country. Thank you.